everybody. Not everybody is back yet. We're going to, this is our last day here, and actually the last day of an 11-year class that started in 2006. Most of the Cosmic Fire classes started in the early part of 2005, and they completed earlier, and this one was the latest one to start. And this is its completion day. Of course, it doesn't mean that we have completed studying Cosmic Fire. That, I think it's a book for 500 or 1,000 years, just like the Secret Doctrine in many ways, because so much of the wisdom was gathered in one place by Blavatsky under DK's direction and with the inspiration of Master M and KH. So it's a huge repository of wisdom. And I remember once that DK said modestly that Cosmic Fire should serve the next generation. I wonder what he meant by generation, not 25 years. When I think of what's in that book and how you could break out into a, almost a PhD treatise, almost every page, I think it will be with us for quite a while. And in terms of starting with these stanzas of Dzyan, 13 of them and many more in the Secret Doctrine, I hope we'll Philip and I have been talking, Philip Lindsay, and he sent me an electronic copy of some of the important sections of anthropogenesis, the genesis of man. And I see, of course, that if we're really going to get into the interpretation of stanza number 10, it's going to be it's going to require some of the work on anthropogenesis. So it looks like an entire course. It looks like it would take a year to study it. But the interesting thing is, of course, that what modern science thinks about the origin of man is very different from the occult doctrine. And the occult doctrine seems fanciful, strange, a fairy tale, compared to the estimates that we make at the present time. There was so much mutability in those early days, so many different types of human beings. Now we seem to have settled pretty much into one standard form, but that wasn't always the case. And a number of different ways of making the human being, even by the power of Kriya Shakti, and even in Lemurian days, according to the anthropogenesis, there were towering giants of great beauty and great intellect created by Kriya Shakti. I suppose those were incarnations of the solar angels themselves. I'm just talking to myself. Now that you've all decided to come back, So I think what we'll do is we'll begin with stanza number 1. I have a very long paper on stanza number 1, but I think I'm going to try to avoid going into that paper because it offers stanza number 1 seems to have a number of different applications, since different parts of the human being, if we interpret this microcosmically, I mean, we can certainly interpret it in terms of the solar system as well, but different parts of the human being seem to be submitted to the fire at different times, so that this idea of destroying the different aspects of the human constitution takes place at different points. We have the destruction of the causal body. We have the destruction of the, okay, I'll put on my coat too. We have the destruction, it has not gotten any, well, it's getting a little, if you could only see everybody here. This is Denmark, and we're, somehow the radiators are not working. So we're just all sitting here bundled up, trying to preserve the latent heat of cosmic fire, right? Not radiatory heat, but latent heat. The internal fiery furnaces, you know. It's a very strange looking group, but I'll spare you that. Anyway, yes, where was I? Yes, there comes a time when the causal body is destroyed. This is the climax of human development. This is something we all have in our mind, you know, our great desire to achieve crucifixion or renunciation, you know, and enter into wider life. But then there also comes a time when it is sometimes said that upon the higher atmic plane, there is a kind of causal body of a higher type, and that has to also be destroyed in order to be liberated into the monad. So, in a way, that is the burning up of the three permanent atoms of the spiritual triad, and that is a different thing still. And then another destruction that is possible is the destruction of the monadic vehicle, which in an alchemical sense liberates the monad onto the seventh plane, the logoic plane. So a number of destructions or burnings are possible. And in the paper that I'll be happy to send to some people, actually this paper was part of the early Fellowship of Cosmic Fire papers. I've been sending them out for years now. And this tabulation in which I offer 4 different scenarios, one of which is the burning of the monadic vehicle. I'm not saying that this is what DK exactly had in mind, but it depends on how you interpret these words like heart, point, center, triangle, apex. The word apex means the top of something, the highest point, just to let you know. So I'm going to we'll read this and maybe discuss the very first and simplest scenario. Yes, we are hoping that it gets warmer here. We certainly are. What we're let's see, where am I? Oh, there we are. Basically, the very first scenario is about the destruction of the causal body. The second scenario involves the destruction, sublimation of the spiritual triad. And the third scenario involves the destruction of the monadic vehicle and the liberation of the central volatile essence or spark onto the logoic plane. Now that's just the microcosmic interpretation. The stanza in a way is so abstract that it could apply to the destructions of the vehicles of the planetary logos and also of the solar logos. But we can make application ourselves to that. Okay, well I think the thing to do, feels nice and warm now. This is good. I'm yes, we're getting closer to the secret of fire. I think that's what it's really all about. And I'm going to Kay and Tuya, I'm going to unmute you, but you have to be careful that there's no movement. Otherwise it will come through. Okay. So let's read the stanza and I will ask you what you think. And then we'll get into scenario number 1 and we'll see to what extent I carry it to the other scenarios. Then we should take this up to our break time, approximately. And then we can get into stanza 10. And then I hope to be speaking to Philip Lindsay, who's in Bolivia right now, and to see if he can join us for his interpretation, because he knows a lot about the sub-races and the branch races and the various subdivisions of time in which some of these events could have occurred. But it does seem that when DK is presenting stanza 10, he is not entirely sequential and chronological about it, and that is a bit of a problem. He'll go so far, and then he seems to go back and review something that even happened before where he started. And sometimes he talks about the future as if it has already happened. So the time equation in stanza 10 is a little difficult to clarify. And then, of course, when it comes to stanza 3 and 4, they are problematic. Those are really difficult ones. So we'll see how far we can get and with what kind of accuracy we can possibly interpret. The secret of the fire lieth hid in the second letter of the sacred word. I'll always ask you, what does that mean to you so far? What is our impression? The secret of the fire lieth hid in the second letter of the sacred word. What impressions come to you here? Well, you see, I believe it has to be AUM, don't you? Because otherwise, if it were to be the OM, the second letter would be M, and that is not holding the secret of the fire. That is a letter of intelligence, or sometimes a letter related to matter. In the English alphabet, anyway, it's the 13th letter, and it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the second aspect of divinity. It's 1 and 3 is 4. You know, it has to do with the fourth and lowest level, the material level. But actually, I collected a little bit from Initiation Human and Solar about solar words, and I think we should review them just a little as we go. So suppose it is the AUM, then what? The secret of the fire. What kind of fire? Or all kinds of fire? Or only one kind of fire? What do you think? Well, suppose it's AUM. Well, it would be neither. Now you've gone on both sides of the sandwich. It's probably solar fire. Although in the destruction of any in the necessary destruction of the various vehicles of some entity, all the fires become involved. But so we have a capital F for fire here, but I think that the type of fire we're speaking of particularly, as related to the second letter of the sacred word, is solar fire. Now, and then it kind of goes on and says the mystery of life is concealed within the heart. And we do know that the life aspect in the human being is found within the heart center, but from another point of view, DK has said, look, when you use the word heart, you really mean soul. And when you use the word I, you really mean soul. So there is a mystery of life. Well, the life aspect, in a way, life is beyond will. There is will, wisdom, and activity, and then life at the center. But sometimes the life aspect is identified particularly with the first aspect. Martha, can we turn on the lights here? Just even some would do. Yes. Oh, okay. That's good. That's good. That's right. You can almost begin to think when the lights are on. Okay. Meditating when the lights are off and thinking when the lights are on. So the mystery of life lies concealed within the heart. The heart has a first ray and second ray quality to it. It also induces the circulation of the third ray. It has the magnetism of the second ray and the powerful vitalization of the first ray. But I don't think we're going to necessarily concentrate on the heart center per se. We want to look at the meaning of heart in a larger sense. There are three periodical vehicles. So what are these vehicles usually called when we think of the three periodical vehicles? The man has three periodical vehicles. So they are actually, it's very simple what they are. They're the three main aspects of the human being, which would be, starting with the highest. Yes, spirit, soul, and matter or personality, or monad, soul, and personality, with personality standing for the matter aspect. Those are the three periodical vehicles: the personality vehicle, the egoic lotus, the soul vehicle, and the monad and its vehicle. So from this perspective, the heart is the middle principle of the three. And then the heart really is that structure on the higher mental plane that we call our most familiar expression of the soul in the egoic lotus, consciousness in the egoic lotus. So in a way, you can see that this is true. When you think about the literal structure of the egoic lotus, and you read the words, the mystery of life is concealed within the heart, what thought comes to you? What is concealed within the egoic lotus? Exactly. The jewel is concealed by the three petals until the time of revelation comes, right? So within this middle or heart structure, sort of the heart of the monad, we're often told the egoic lotus is the heart of the monad. Within this heart, spiritual heart structure, the jewel in the lotus representing the life aspect is concealed. Now, the monad as a vehicle and with its aspects, will, wisdom, and activity, is not life per se. But at the heart of the monad, or the very essence of that triple expression, is found a point of pure being. And that is the life aspect. I like to call it the volatile essence, using the alchemical terms. And DK does quite a bit of alchemy in this book. He talks about the release of the volatile essence as the climax of the entire process at the seventh initiation. So I like to think of that as the true life aspect, and that the vehicle of the monad and its various aspects are part of the expression of the life aspect. But sometimes DK is not too specific when differentiating life from the first ray. HPB is specific, and DK quotes her. Let's see. Let's see if I can find this. Life which pervades them. If I just spelled it correctly, which pervades them all. Let me see about this. Matter is the vehicle for the manifestation of soul on this plane of existence. And soul is the vehicle on a higher plane for the manifestation of spirit. So matter, soul, and spirit. And these three are a trinity synthesized by life, which pervades them all. So this is the great statement of the equivalence of spirit, soul, and matter found in the Secret Doctrine. And I think we see from this sentence that life is something other than spirit or monad or will. Life is the synthesis of all of these. It is the point within the triangle. If you take a tetrahedron, let's say you have a triangle and you want to make a tetrahedron out of it, you take the center in the triangle and you lift it up and you so that all sides are equal, and you have created a figure with 4 triangles in it. And the uppermost point is going to represent the point of life, particularly. So we keep this in mind when we look for the very center of things, the essence of things. It is life and not necessarily will. Will is the first expression of life, and then comes soul, and then comes the personality or monad. Yes? The pineal gland is connected with the, the eye that the soul is connected with is the third eye, of which the pineal gland is the physical expression. So DK tells us, let the disciple learn the use of the hand in service, let him seek the mark of the messenger in his feet, and let him learn to see with the eye which looks out from between the two. And then he tells us it's not really the third eye, it's the soul. But the third eye and the soul go together. And also the spirit aspect as well is using this pineal gland in the work of magic. So the first and second ray are found there as well. See, yeah, there as well. The first and second ray are also found there as well. The life-supporting aspect of the heart is the anchoring of the spirit aspect. The magnetic love quality that the heart is responsible for is the second aspect. They're both anchored there. I'll show you this. Well, usually the way they say the consciousness thread is anchored in the head, and the life thread is anchored in the heart. But there is a definite second ray quality to the heart, and there's a definite first ray quality to the directing power of the third eye, which is the etheric area where magic is wrought. So there is a will aspect connected with the etheric nature of the pineal gland. And yet the classic statement is consciousness anchored in the head, life anchored in the heart. Let's see, how does it go? Let the disciple, okay, let's see, I'll put it this way, use of the hand. So here he says, let the disciple learn the use of the hand in service. Okay. Occultly understood, the use of the hands is the utilization of the chakras, 4 centers, in the palm of the hands. And let's see, the mark of the messenger is there. He actually says quite a bit here. In the fullest sense, therefore, okay, the ego or higher self is literally to the monad what the third eye is to man, and therefore is described as looking out from between the monad or spiritual self on the one hand and the personal self on the other. So the eye which looks out from between the two is actually the soul. So the soul is the heart and the soul is the eye. In this 12th rule. And let him learn to see with the eye which looks out from between the two. Yes, so that is considered to be the ego looking out between the monad and between the personality. Sometimes we have to look at the symbolical meaning of what seems to be literal. Okay, so the secret of fire lieth in the second letter of the sacred word. The mystery of life is concealed within the heart, and heart and soul are considered also equivalent terms. And I tried to explain that although the life aspect is anchored in the heart center, the life aspect is also anchored in the jewel in the lotus, which is in the middle of the egoic lotus, which is also a heart of a kind. Maybe I can find for you a definition that heart and soul are equivalent, but maybe not. Heart, soul. No, it's going to be too difficult to do that. No. Equivalent, no. Heart, same. Well, maybe. The energy of the heart center. No, I think it's not going to be worth. It's not going to. If I can't find it quickly, then I can't find it. But anyway, heart and soul are considered equivalent, and the eye and soul are considered equivalent. A higher symbolism. Okay. Well, not the same. As a man thinketh in his heart. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That injunction, if rightly followed, brings about the imposition of mental control upon the personality. It affects the brain. The as-if type of behavior brings in a still higher factor than that of thought. It involves a constant attempt to live as if the soul. As a man thinketh in his heart, i.e., as he thinketh in the soul, so is he. This is where the heart and soul are considered to be equivalent. Okay. The life principle, the flow of divine energy through all forms, is temporarily seated in the heart, while the consciousness principle, the soul of all things, is located temporarily, as far as the form of a particular human unit is concerned, within the brain. So that's how it is usually understood. Well, I won't go through all of that. Now, I have a section here on solar words, and I think it's rather long, and so therefore I don't really think we can go over a great deal of it. But there may be a few things which are of importance and interest. Let's see. Okay. Maybe the AUM. When the Logos, for instance, finishes the sounding of the sacred AUM and the vibration ceases, then the disintegration of the forms ensue. The words of power, or the permutations of the AUM, exist in every possible tone, subtone, and quarter tone. I wonder about the three types of divisions on any plane. The tone perhaps relates to the plane, the subtone relates to the subplane, and the quarter tone to the subplane. On any solar plane, there are 49 divisions, not just 7. Okay, and upon these shades of sound, the work of creation and sustentation is built up. The multiplicity of sounds exists within each greater sound and affects different groups, and the sounds are falling into 2 categories in general. The initiating sounds are those which produce manifestation or phenomena of all kinds, and eventuating sounds are those which are produced within the forms themselves during the evolutionary process. There's a lot to read here. It's around page 151, 152 of the Initiation Human and Solar. But now this is in contrast to what we read the other day, and I think it's worth going over. There is the great word as sounded by the Logos of the solar system. Om, says the Mighty One. And that's what we did discuss with stanza 2. And communicated to him by his superior. Who is his superior? Sirius is his superior, the Logos of Sirius, and also the Logos of the 7 solar systems, of which ours is one. So that being is a cosmic Logos, perhaps that's his superior. Then there are 3 words committed by the solar Logos to each of the 3 Logoi as follows. Now, who are the 3 Logoi? We have our solar Logos, and then we have these beings. And if you look around the sun, you will find Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma. These are the 3 persons of the Logoic Trinity. And they are greater than any of the planetary Logoi. In fact, they are relatively so great that they require, each of them, 3 planetary Logoi to work through. Like, for instance, the Lord of the 3rd ray, maybe Brahma, he requires Saturn, Mars, and Earth to work through. And the Lord of the Vishnu, requires Jupiter, Uranus, and Venus to work through. And we're not told who Shiva works through, but you can do it by elimination. It's probably Pluto, Vulcan, and Neptune. It's interesting that Neptune would be related to the first ray, isn't it? But what does Neptune carry in his hand, or what does Shiva carry in his hand? You know, Shiva, as the king of ascetics, he's often seen holding something up here in his hand. And in fact, it is the symbol of Neptune. It is the trident. And it brings about dissolution of all forms. And so it has a very first-ray connotation. So there are three words committed by the Solar Logos to each of the three logoi as follows. Now the logoi are Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma. Is that clear? Okay. The sacred word A is committed to Shiva, he who embodies the spirit or will aspect. Notice he didn't say he who embodies the life aspect, because in fact the life aspect is something greater than either spirit will, soul love, or personality intelligence. The sacred sound A is committed to Shiva, who embodies the spirit or will aspect. It is the word through which God the Father works. Now, the secret of fire is hidden in the second letter of the sacred word, so let's pay attention to how he describes the U. And actually, the U is kind of interesting because when you look at the U, it comes down and it goes up like this. And the U, to me, suggests the second outpouring of divinity. I go forth on my pilgrimage, I build forms, and then I rise as the forms refine and I return. So the U seems to suggest the path of descent, making the turn, and the path of reapproach. I mean, if we wanted to really complete the U, we would make it an O. And if you put the monad on the top, in a way, it takes care of completing the form of the U, because then you have the descent, the turn, and the return to the monad. So U is the word of the second aspect. The sound U is given to Vishnu, God the Son. And now this is important. He is the form builder and provides the body which the spirit must occupy, thereby making divine incarnation possible. A is the life sound, and U is the form sound. But now I have to ask you, is form matter? Because really, form is a pattern of relationships into which the building blocks of matter are aggregated. So form is like a energy pattern on which all the tiny third aspect items into which they are gathered, and then apparently a form appears, what we call a tangible form. But without the pattern, there would be no form. So form is the result of pattern making. And the second ray is called by an interesting name, the ray of the divine pattern. So let us not think of form as matter per se. Rather, in a way, the M is the M of matter in the AUM. But DK relates it to the principle of intelligence. Anyway, A is the life sound, and U is the form sound. The sound M was given to Brahma, who, in his work of energy provider, and I think that's very important because, vitalizer, the green, what did we read the other day? The green of vitalization? The green is related to the M, related to the what? Yeah, you know, I'm going to have to get my hearing aids tuned up here. Vivification, that's it. Okay, yeah, okay. Vivification. Who in his work of energy provider links in active intelligence spirit and form, or the self and the not self. So this is a different way of looking at the AUM, and I thought it would be good to do that before we say that the secret of fire is hidden in the sacred word. It might be pointed out that much information anent the three departments of hierarchy of our planet will come to the student who wisely ponders these. And then there are 7 great words that follow. They're again based on the 3 sounds A, U, and M. These produced creation, or the manifestation of the 7 planes of our solar system. So in a way, they are phohatic words. They are not committed to human entities, but to the 7 great devas or Raja lords, who are the ensouling lives of a plane. Hence, in the various initiations, their collaboration is necessary before the key words can be committed to the initiate. I'll tell you, if you haven't read Initiation Human and Solar recently, or Letters on Occult Meditation, those 2 books are clarifying and foundational to so much that we read afterwards. And they're not very long books. Maybe each is 200 and something pages. So they are really worth reviewing. We will never understand them in their entirety. So we have 3 great sounds and 7 subsidiary words. And I think we saw in the diagram of the outpourings exactly that. We saw the 3, in a way representing the 3 great words, hovering above the 7. So that's the Kabbalistic formulation, finally, the 3 above the 7, the crown above the 7 normal Sephirot. Okay. Maybe that's, well, and then it goes on, 49 words relating to the 49 subplanes, and these are committed to the 49 builders of the sacred fires. And then there are other words here, words given to Vishnu, who creates the forms of the kingdoms. Yeah, well, we're not going to get into that excessively. There are other words as well. The sound of the Brahma aspect is the note Fa, and that tells us much about the evolution. So this is a very worthwhile section to read, but it will lead us off on some tangents. Suffice it to say that U is the form-building word. The second aspect is the form-building aspect, and solar fire creates the patterns of form through sound and holds patterns together through magnetism. So when we talk about building unity or cohesion or a sense of harmony between people, the U is the letter because it is magnetic and coherent and brings cohesion in all the elements. If it wasn't there, everything would just fly apart and would not be related in a form. Okay. Now, come back now. No, okay. I think my computer is going to start acting up again. Okay, the secret of the fire lieth hid in the 2nd letter of the sacred word, the U, the form-building word, and the fire is solar fire, at least for the time being. The mystery of life is concealed within the heart. It's concealed within the jewel and the lotus, which is part of the heart of the monad, and it's also concealed within the monad itself. Now we come to some other statements, and these are subject to different lines of interpretation. When the lower point vibrates, when the sacred triangle glows, when the point, the middle center, and the apex connect and circulate the fire, of whatever kind it may be, when the threefold apex likewise burns, Then the two triangles, the greater and the lesser, merge into one flame which burneth up the whole. Okay, so now we have to interpret that. But before, I have a lot of pages of interpretation on that, and I'll give them to you. But before getting into those things, what do you think? Okay, so the upper triangle, yes. Okay. Yeah, I think, although I couldn't immediately translate what you just said for everybody, and nor can they hear it exactly. I think you said that the the middle center was the soul. I think you said that the spiritual triad is involved. You said that this was part of the Antakarana work. I think you're calling the spiritual triad the sacred triangle. Are you doing that? Okay, and you're calling the middle center the soul. And you're saying that there is a circulation of fire between the above and the below, and it leads eventually to the destruction of the causal body. Okay, yeah, and I think that's generally a correct assessment in what I would call scenario number one of how this can be applied. But now let us isolate these points, if we can. When the lower point vibrates, when the sacred triangle glows, when the point, the middle center, and the apex connect and circulate the fire, when the threefold apex likewise burns. See, in other words, we have a few additional points that we have to cover here, right? So what is the what is the lower point? When the lower point vibrates, what is the possibility there? Well, I think we're going to have to keep this more or less in the realm of the permanent atoms and their vehicles. Not so much the chakras, I believe. So the lower point then could be the mental unit, which is part of the Antakarana work, or it could be all three of these members of the atomic triangle considered as a unit. Now, if we go to the map, we will see what the lower point could be. It could be considered simply these three as one, either the mental unit or these three at one. And the hint there is the idea of lower point. The word lower gives us the hint that we need, because we learned where is the atomic triangle actually located. We learned that a couple of days ago, or at least it was reviewed. Where is the atomic triangle located? In the lower part of the egoic lotus. Okay? So I believe that the idea of the lower point has to do with either the entirety of the atomic triangle or with the mental unit, which is sort of the top of the atomic triangle. There comes a time when there is such a circulation of fire between the mental unit astral permanent atom and physical permanent atom, that it becomes a tiny little sphere, a tiny little fiery sphere with a huge potential for causing destruction. In other words, we're told at a certain point in the healing process, when healing means death, that the form then severs the connection. And it's through this intensity of the rotation of fire in the three members of the atomic triangle. That could be considered a point. That could be considered a lower point. When the lower point vibrates, when the sacred triangle glows. Now, I believe you said that the sacred triangle would be considered the spiritual triad. You said that, I think, in the Antikarana work anyway. Well, that seems reasonable, doesn't it? From one point of view, that seems reasonable. Now, what is this glowing that's going on? See, what is the process that we are preparing for at this time? What actually is about to happen? This is about liberation, isn't it? This little paragraph is about the use of sacred fire to achieve the liberation of man, planetary logos, solar logos, whatever being. This particular stanza is applicable to many types of release, of many types of being. So why would the sacred triangle glow? It might be that the striving, I'm just kind of repeating what you say so people get it. This, the striving, the heat of that which is lower, and the heat caused, etc. On the other hand, I want to say that liberation arises from below and descends from above at the same time, and that the one initiator, Sanat Kumara, and we read about him as the Lord of Fire in one of these stanzas, directs these forces. So the question is, does the glowing of the sacred triangle, the spiritual triad, depend upon the heat of the lower point, or will it develop a glow in its own right? In other words, is it only when the tiny little atomic triangle is heated up that the sacred fire glows because it is caused by that heat, or does it glow in its own right? And what I would like to suggest is that we need fire from above as well as fire from below to bring about the liberation. And especially we need the second aspect of the will, which is found in the spiritual triad, in order to create the liberation. So I think from its own high level, it is beginning to activate in such a way that it throws energy into the egoic lotus on its own. That's my impression. And of course, it's not burning, it's glowing. When you look at the map, it glows a bit more. It glows a bit more. You know, maybe you say it's always glowing, but it glows a bit more now because its activation is needed. Because what is the spiritual triad about to do when the causal body is destroyed? What is the function then of the spiritual triad when the causal body is in the phases of its destruction? It works directly without the intermediary of the soul. You say yes. And matter of fact, it has to take the place of the soul, and it has to be so magnetic that it will absorb everything that the soul body had. So, you know, it's coming into some state of radiation, glowing activation. It's beginning to be magnetic. It's going to draw up the life that was imprisoned in the causal body into itself. That's one of the things that's going to happen. Okay. When the lower point vibrates, when the sacred triangle glows, and then I think he repeats, when the point, the middle center, and the apex. So I think the word point there is a repetition of the word lower point. When the point, the middle center, and what did you call it? What is the middle center? See, we are destroying the causal body now, aren't we? Actually, he tells us in Rule 11, you have to do this deliberately with the help of your group. You have to get together and sound a word, or a word sounds out of you, and this is bringing about the destruction of the causal body. Let the, how does it say, let the group together move the fire within the jewel in the lotus into the triad, and let them find the word which will carry forth this work. The group is, well, it is not even possible, you know, because the brothers have to have reached the fourth great cycle of attainment in order to do that. But of course, those are group rules, and it's the group taking the fourth initiation. So they do it together. Now, we're very far away from that, you know. But what we're doing is we're envisioning what this might be like, or should we say we're standing outside the restaurant reading the menu for a long time. It will, the question was, will that raise the Kundalini? So let's just say at the fourth initiation, which has a lot of Pluto in it, and Pluto being the ruler of the Kundalini, there will be a destructive rising of the Kundalini, which corresponds with the destruction of the causal body. And of course, this rising of the Kundalini can lead to the destruction of the outer form as well. But interestingly about the Kundalini, it is the fifth initiation, in whatever vehicle you may take it, that centers energy on the base of the spine. In other words, it begins at the third initiation, it continues strongly in the fourth initiation, but the job is really done from top to bottom, from will to purpose, at the fifth initiation. So at the fifth initiation, the Kundalini is completely released as far as it can be in the energy system of man per se. Because a master is a man and a Chohan is not. So it probably, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, I've done this with my Kundalini and that and all that, but the full release of it is not until the fifth initiation. You can find, you know, in the book Rays and the Initiations, page 340 shows you that. It tells you what chakra is the focus of attention in every initiation. And very strangely, the base of the spine initiation, the fifth initiation, has for its major center the base of the spine with the Kundalini. Okay. When the lower point vibrates, and it becomes very intense, and the sacred triangle is becoming magnetic and is underlying the egoic lotus and getting ready to receive the content of the egoic lotus, when the point, the middle center, and let us call the middle center the petals of the egoic lotus. And by the way, when you use the word soul, and you say, well, it's the soul, I prefer in a case like this almost to use the word the soul body, or the causal body, or the egoic lotus, because soul is consciousness. And what we normally call the soul is simply a special case of consciousness. In other words, soul is, if I'm triadally conscious, that's soul. If I'm monadically conscious, that's soul. If I'm conscious only of my personality nature, that's soul too. So it's a special case of consciousness that we normally call the soul. But I like to call it the soul in the causal body, or the soul in the egoic lotus. Okay. When the point, the middle center, which is the major part of the causal body, or egoic lotus, and the apex connect and circulate the fire. And now we have to define the word apex. Is it the same thing as the sacred triangle which is glowing? Or not? See, what does apex mean? I know you're not native English-speaking people, but it means like the top of the mountain, the top of the triangle. For instance, if you look at a pyramid and you look at the capstone of the pyramid up here, that's the apex. So it's the highest point. Or a triangle, it's like a little pyramid on top of the big pyramid. It's the apex, the capstone. So is that clear? Like if you have a mountain and you take a little slice of the mountain peak, that's the apex. The top point is the apex. Okay, so what is the apex in this configuration? Because, one of the things we have to do is look at the items that he is mentioning, and we have to decide what they are and where they are. Otherwise, we will not get a clear understanding. We will not get a clear understanding of the process. So when the point, let's call it the mental unit or the atomic triangle, the middle center, let's call it the petals of the egoic lotus largely, and the apex connect and circulate the fire, well, there's a couple of ways of looking at this. And when the threefold apex likewise burns, see, I want to point something out to you. There are several interpretations here, and that is, of course, the difficulty. I did say that it's possible to think of the point as the mental unit. Now take a look at the triangle that is created there. There is an apex in this triangle. What is it? Well, when the point, the middle center, and the apex likewise burn, what does it say? When the point, the middle center, and the apex. So apex always is the high point. So what we're looking at is the threefold antakarana. That's what it's called. The antakarana that we usually are concerned with is this one between the mental unit and the what? What is this? You build the antakarana from the mental unit to the what? Through the what? Personality is down here, built around the mental unit. So now we're going up from the mental unit around which the personality is built up to the higher mental, monastic, permanent atom, apex. In this triangle, this is an apex. So the fire is going to be circulated in this triangle. It requires the building of the antakarana. That's one apex. That's the apex of this triangle. And that's a possibility. It's not a threefold apex, is it? It's a one-fold apex. Okay. So the words are here. See, look, I've written this out all very systematically in the papers that I'm going to give you. But it would be too tedious to do that. So I'm just, kind of winging it here. When the point, the middle center, and the apex. So here is the point, from one point of view, representing the atomic triangle. The threefold, the middle center is this whole thing, but the center of it is sort of representing the whole thing. And the apex are related, and the fire circulates here. So that's one condition. That's one way of looking at the word apex, okay? Now I want to look at the word apex in another way, because there's more than one apex in this setup. Now all of this seems terribly fifth ray, and like, why do we have to know all these technicalities? But if we want to know what's really, well, it would be like a surgeon. Well, why do I have to know what those organs do? I just get in there and, rearrange things. You know, the fourth ray surgeon, because I like this color and that color, and I think they should be related. And oh, what an arrangement. Okay. You know, you want the fifth ray, because the fifth ray tells you where things are and what they do, what are the functions. You want that. And so DK is always telling us, look, people say, oh, why do I have to know about all these technicalities of occultism? And DK says, well, it's just a lazy mind that doesn't want to know, because you've got to know in order to be able to work out the physiology of occultism. So, you know, when we approach the higher initiations, let's say, well, I don't want to digress. At the first initiation, what's the main ray that's used? It's a sequence. 7. At the second initiation, what's the ray? 6. At the third initiation, what's the ray? 5th. See what I mean? And at the fourth initiation, the 4th. And at the 5th initiation, the 1st. Yeah, okay. Right. Okay. So when we start approaching illumination or enlightenment, we really need that 5th ray for the specifics, so that we can get into the science of the soul. Because science, direction, and integration are the 3 factors which lead us to the third initiation. And science is there. What? Where do you get it? Well, let's just say that you have all the rays. Everyone has all the rays. And in every permanent atom is the potential for all the rays. So it's within your own monadic nature, and it's stored in your soul body jewel, and it's stored in the permanent atoms. You can always access a ray through the use of directed will. And then if you access it often enough, you build in that faculty, and maybe in your next life it just comes naturally. Okay? So here is something called the point, the middle center, and the apex. That's one apex. One apex. I think I'm going to have to just keep apologizing to my computer and hope that it will accept my apology. Connect and circulate the fire. So here it goes, zing, zing, zing. The fire is circulating here. This is one of the things that's going to destroy the causal body, as well as this rapid rotation down here of the fire in the atomic triangle. And now he goes on, when the threefold apex likewise burns, and now we are presented with another possibility. What is that? The threefold apex. Is it the apex we just looked at? Maybe not. Maybe it's something else. What could it be? When the threefold apex likewise burns, what could that be? Let us take a look at the map. The causal body we've just done. That was the middle center, wasn't it? Of course, you can say that within the causal body is a threefold structure, of course, but the apex we just pointed to was higher than the causal body, wasn't it? It was the monastic permanent atom, which is part of the spiritual triad. When the threefold apex likewise burns, what could it be? See, in other words, we got to know how the causal body is destroyed. What does Sanat Kumara do to assist with the destruction of the causal body? Okay, but that was what was that? That's possible, of course, that it burns. But I don't think we want to burn that yet. It is possible, and I think one of my scenarios involves that idea. But that was also called the sacred triangle. Why is it now being called the apex? Go a little higher. When the threefold apex likewise burns, what do you see on this map? Is there anything that's threefold and that's at the top of anything? Well, she just said the triad, which is, of course, is possible, but go a little higher. Do you see anything? Yes, precisely the monadic, the threefold apex, burning away with its fire, electric fire, which Sanat Kumara brings right down into the whole thing. In other words, it's the destructive power of the monad, which is also applied at the fourth initiation. And that is, monadic fire begins to circulate, and Sanat Kumara is directing that with the rod of initiation. So there is electric fire brought into this destruction. There is the fire of the second aspect of will, particularly, which is important. Now, I collected all this stuff. I have all these references, but what I have to do is put them together in just one paper, which would help us understand. Otherwise, I'll have to go on a search. But suffice it to say, the love within the causal body is not great enough for the love the spirit wants to express. So the form has to be destroyed so that that wider type of Buddhic love can be expressed. And the power of the monad is helping to destroy that the confines for that kind of love, so that the consciousness can polarize itself on the Buddhic plane. So let's see what that might mean. When the point, the middle center, and the apex connect and circulate the fire, so that's right there between three minds unite, the three areas of the mental unit, the son of mind, and monastic permanent atom. When the threefold apex likewise burns, which is the monadic fire, then the two triangles, which are, in this case, the spiritual triad and the lower triad, merge into one flame, and, especially on the mental plane, and burneth up the whole. Now, it's the causal body that's burned up, and then you are the higher triad and the whatever of the personality may remain in a spiritualized sense. Basically what happens is that the power of the lower permanent atoms is absorbed into the triad. So basically you keep your personality, only it is a spiritualized personality. These two triangles approach each other, and in their approach they liberate the solar fire of the solar angels, and that returns to its source, and now you have the higher triad and the lower triad united without the mediatorship of the solar angels. So, but of course you might die in the process as a personality, or you might not. And if you don't die, then what happens is I suppose you would keep your permanent atoms, otherwise the lower permanent atoms, otherwise the vehicle cannot exist. There would be a direct line of connection between the monastic permanent atom and the mental unit, between the Buddhic permanent atom and the astral permanent atom, between the atmic permanent atom and the physical permanent atom. And you would be the triad in expression instead of just the soul in expression. You would be a fourth degree initiate who would be the triad, at least the Buddhic part of it, in expression. Now, would you continue until the fifth initiation? If you did, the atmic part of your triad would definitely ground itself right in your physical permanent atom. That might be a way to go. There's also other ways to go as well. The atmic can relate to the mental unit, the Buddhic again to the astral, and the monastic to the physical permanent atom. One is reflection and the other is superimposition. So you can superimpose the higher triangle on the lower, or you can reflect the higher triangle in the lower, like this. However, if you do die, and you don't need to be reborn, then the fire of the lower atomic triangle would become absorbed in the higher triad. And you wouldn't have to take a body the next time. You would project the ability to generate a body out of your higher triad by the power of Kriya Shakti. You would create a Maya Virupa. Even as a fourth degree initiate, it is possible to do that. So this is the scenario which may be the most likely scenario, which involves pretty much the destruction of the causal body by the uniting of different kinds of fires. The fire of the atomic triangle, the fire of the central jewel of the lotus, which is connected to the monad, because when that monadic fire comes down, it activates the inner fire of the jewel in the lotus, so it becomes very destructive. And also the fire, especially of Buddhi, in the spiritual triad. All the different fires are combining and are being directed by Sanat Kumara as the one initiator to cause this disruption, which is a liberation. So is that fairly clear, that possibility? That, yes. When the sacred triangle glows, well, here's the thing. If you're looking, an apex has to be the topmost structure. That's what it means. Apex is on top. The apex is threefold. What is the only threefold structure that's on the top? It's the only one. It's the only threefold structure that is at the top of everything. Of course, and you know, sometimes we call the spiritual triad spiritual soul, or we call it the sacred triangle. Of course, you can say, well, the monad is a kind of sacred triangle. It is. But the idea of apex here suggests the topmost structure, and it topmost. And the spiritual triad is simply a projection of the topmost structure. That's what I meant. Yeah, you were saying that. Yes, and I'm saying that I don't think that can be, because, in other words, if the sacred triangle is the same as the threefold apex, then where is the spiritual triad involved in this process? And it is. You've got to have everything involved, because the spiritual triad feeds all of the egoic circles of the lotuses, so its fire is needed too. I have down here 4 scenarios, and if I can, it's here. I don't want to get too complicated about this. This is one of those things I really wrote. I wrote a lot on this, on the different scenarios. And the scenarios had to do with how to destroy different parts of the human system through fire. At this point, we have only the causal body being destroyed, and it is the 4th initiation. At the 5th initiation, the spiritual triad contains the consciousness and the focus. But at the 6th initiation, the permanent atoms of the spiritual triad are destroyed by fire. unless they are deliberately being preserved the way the Buddha did. The Buddha kept his higher atoms and his higher vehicles, he kept them available for the Christ or for the Maitreya Buddha. But normally, at the sixth initiation, there would be another fire. And I looked at this as a possible scenario. So here is the three-fourfold scenario that I tried to create. The first one was what we discussed: the destruction of the causal body. And I have two varieties of it. One in which the apex is the spiritual triad, and the other in which it's the monad. And the threefold apex just repeats itself. What I should have put in here the first time, the apex is, I think I better put this, the sacred triangle, yeah, that's right. And I think what I'm going to do is put this in, or just the monastic permanent atom. Okay. The next scenario is pretty much the destruction of the causal body, but I've slightly rearranged things. And instead of calling the apex the spiritual triad, I called it the monad the way I did this time. But the next two scenarios are really different. One is the destruction of the spiritual triad at the sixth initiation, meaning that the monad is completely free and is above the five worlds of human evolution, completely free, having burned up not only the lower permanent atoms, not only the yogic lotus, but the permanent atoms of the triad which are absorbed into the monad. So that is another kind of liberation. And I entitled the different parts by a different kind of name. The heart becomes the second aspect of divinity. The lower point is now not the mental unit, it's the monastic permanent atom. The middle center is the Buddhic permanent atom. The sacred triangle is the spiritual triad, and the apex is the atomic permanent atom. The threefold apex is the monad. The greater triangle is the monad. The lesser triangle is the spiritual triad. The one flame is the entire fiery process which destroys everything under the monad. See, when the spiritual triad and the lower triangle come together and merge, the spiritual triad remains, and everything below is destroyed. When the monad and the spiritual triad come together, the monad remains, and the spiritual triad is destroyed. So one of these scenarios, which I wrote out step by step in this document, is the destruction of the spiritual triad at the sixth initiation. Now, what is likely? Maybe it's not so likely that that's what this is all about, but it could work. The final scenario is this, that destruction of the monad, and I shouldn't really call it monad, I should call it monadic vehicle. And let's say liberating the monad, the essential monad. All right, now how would that work? Maybe it's not so important to know how it would work, but it is another possibility. And after we finish with the microcosmic, we could go on to the planetary destruction, which is not yet, and we could go on to the end of the solar system when the solar logos takes his fourth initiation minimally, and all of this would still apply on that higher turn of the spiral. I think so. I think that's the assumption that I'm making, that this is such a universal formula for destruction. That all the fires are let loose to get rid of any intermediary, and you stand in a higher principle after the fire has done its work. So instead of standing in your consciousness in the causal body, you are standing in Buddhi after scenario 1 has been completed. So this is the heart, is the second aspect of divinity. The lower point is the lower triangle of man. The middle center, the entire spiritual triad. The sacred triangle, the spiritual triad, and the apex, the monad. The threefold apex, the monad, the greater triangle, the spiritual triad. I have only a "the" here. I'm not sure it would work. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what. Ignore this one. It's not complete. The only thing that is correct is that there is a fiery process which releases the monad into a higher sphere of life, i.e., the logoic plane. And then burneth up the whole, the entire human atom, but retaining the volatile essence which is liberated onto the seventh plane. I'll have to fill in a couple of things there. I can see that I must have stopped midway in the process. So there are a couple of things which are not exactly correct. The sacred triangle in this case, the middle center. Let's see. No, this is wrong. The lower point is the spiritual triad. The middle center is the threefold monad. Is that correct? Something like that. The sacred triangle, maybe this is it. I have to work on this just a little more. The apex is the essence of the monad. Essence of the monad. I'll work on it more. I guess I got a little bit ambitious and wanted to destroy the monad, and now it's destroying me. Okay. But anyway, let's just say this, that there does come a time before the seventh initiation, I think, when the monadic vehicle is destroyed. The temple of Ezekiel is destroyed. And at that point, I just thought of something. I'm glad we went over this again, because I have to talk about the triangle on the highest level of the atmic plane. So I have to write that in there and not to forget it, because it's an occult structure. So do not forget the triangle on the highest level of the atmic plane. Okay. So anyway, repeating what I was going to say, there comes a time when the temple of Ezekiel has to be destroyed. The temple of Ezekiel is a threefold structure. It has will, wisdom, and activity. But at the center of the temple is the life of the monad, and that is never destroyed. So that rises onto the next plane. So we have different triangles operating here. And I realize now that if we're going to destroy the monadic vehicle, we will not have the usual lower triangle at all. We won't even have a causal body. We have to begin from the spiritual triad, because it's a master who is doing this. It's a Chohan who is doing this. So that changes my perspective on all of this, and I have to kind of give myself a very strong hint in red, like this: rewrite this. And then I will come closer to the truth. Okay, anyway, you see scenario 1, it's what we normally expect, destroying the causal body. Scenario 2 is just a slight rearrangement of the factors. It also destroys the causal body. Scenario 3 is a very likely thing that will happen one day when the spiritual triad is destroyed, just like the lower permanent atoms have been destroyed, and you become a liberated monad. Are there any questions about this at this point? Any comments? Does it make any sense? Or do you find it confusing? There's a lower triangle, there's a higher triangle, there's a causal body, there's a monad, there's Sanat Kumara. All of them are involved. The lower triangle is intense. The spiritual triad is magnetically glowing, and it's going to lift the content of the causal body into itself. The monad is going to send down a ray right into the jewel of the lotus, and that inner fire is going to break through the wall of the causal body, which Sanat Kumara has cracked with his rod of initiation. Put all those fires together, monadic, triadal, the inner fire of the jewel in the lotus, and the rapidly rotating intense frictional fires of the atomic triangle, plus the one initiator, and you get the fire that destroys the causal body and the liberation at the fourth initiation. So that much should be clear. Does it seem clear? I hope so. And then scenario 3, you don't have a causal body anymore. You don't have a lower triangle anymore. And you're getting ready, like the Christ, to be a liberated monad. We have to get rid of this lower triangle somehow. How do we do that? So that's what scenario 3 is about. Those are strictly speculative, and I think not so important. The more I think about this with you, I think that the first 2 scenarios are more important. So we're about ready to begin stanza number 10, which is much more historical. And I hope that we discuss it for a while, and I hope Philip will be able to join us and give us his a well-cultivated perspective on these historical matters. Any thing you'd like to say before we take our break? Would you like to destroy your causal body before this afternoon is complete? But it kind of could be inconvenient for the trip home. Yeah. You know. What did you say? You mean just some fire in the room? But would you like solar fire or fire by friction? You have to be careful what kind of fire you invoke, you know. It is getting a little warmer in this room, though, isn't it? Slowly. If you go sit on that radiator, you will feel the effect. It actually has... It is warming. Yes, solar fire would be nice. What happened to the sun? Is it still here? No. Well, if you were up in Svalbard, I understand, you wouldn't even see the sun at this point. Even in Tromsø, Norway, it disappears on the 21st of November and is gone for 2 months. So Svalbard is much farther north than that. So maybe we should have one of our classes in an igloo in Svalbard, and each one of us can take turns being the sentinel for the polar bears. I feel resistance. I feel resistance to this idea. Okay, you take a little break, and we'll come back and get into the dinosaurs. Yeah, it really is. It really is very well. Well, DK has been very selective with these stanzas. There are all kinds of them. You know the ones in the Secret Doctrine. Yeah, yeah. We'll do what we can with it. Okay, okay. Okay, friends, we'll just take a little break and see if we can come back and talk about this more historical stanza, and I'll check with Philip Lindsay to see if he can be with us for his perspective. Otherwise, we will just do the best we can under the circumstances. So, 1, 2,